Right, kia ora. Good afternoon. I am Trina Cooper, the General Manager for PARTA. It is Baby Loss Awareness Week, and thank you for making the time to be part of our PARTA pop-up chat today with Dr. Vicki Culling talking about baby loss. This session is being recorded and will be made available on the PARTA website. We ask that you remain muted, and if you wish to ask a question, please use the chat function you see at the bottom of your screen, and these will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Many healthcare providers have not had training on how to interact and communicate with bereaved parents and families when a baby or infant dies. As a result, they feel unsure about what to say and worry that they will say something wrong or make things worse. In this pop-up session, Vicki Culling will talk briefly about grief and then offer guidance around communication, specifically what to say and not to say, including examples based on feedback from bereaved parents and families. Vicki, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Trina. Kia ora koutou, ko Vicki Culling taku ingoa, no utipoti ahau, kei te whanganui a tāra ahau I noho ana I naenei. So greetings, my name is Vicki Culling. I am a mainlander from Otago and I live in Wellington. So it's my absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you so much to PARTA for asking me to do this. I really appreciate it. And especially with it being Baby Loss Awareness Week, it's important. It's a week for us to raise awareness for baby loss, but for bereaved parents, every day is Baby Loss Awareness Day, and yeah, it's just really good to be able to do this in this special week. Tomorrow is the 15th of October, which is the International Day, and a really special day on our calendar. So I just want to start by acknowledging the topic that I'm covering, and by sharing a whakatauki to acknowledge our babies who have died. So ahakoa he iti he pounamu, although small, it is precious. And this sort of aligns with the SANS strapline, a little life, not a little loss. So by way of introduction, I use this picture that my daughter drew when she was 5 years old, and she is down in the bottom right hand corner. That is Phoebe, and she drew, they had were asked to draw a picture of their family, and so I'm the big person there with my hand around my husband's shoulder, even though it looks like something else, and the little girl in the middle is Esther, and that is our daughter who died. And I really love this picture because it shows how Esther is a presence in our life, and Phoebe, included her in our picture of our family. She died a year and a bit before Phoebe was born. It's 22 years ago, and yeah, and it's such a lovely photo, and it actually makes me happy, really happy looking at it. And from Esther's little life, my big life changed a lot. And 4 years after she died, I became involved with SANS, and still remain involved today at a local and national level. So yeah, it's important for me to just mention SANS, and to mention that SANS is a voluntary non-profit organisation that provides the bulk of support to bereaved parents throughout our country, and is relied on by our health system as well. So that's a really important point to be aware of, that yeah, like PARTA, we don't get a lot of funding. In fact, we only the only thing that's funded is the SANS support packs. So today, just going to talk a little bit about grief, and then talk about talking about grief and acknowledging loss, and then a little bit about what should I say and not say. I've got quite a few slides with quotes on them, and kind of breaking the rule around. I prefer not to put lots of words on slides, but sometimes others say things a whole lot better than I do, and I really want to share this with you. And I've got some quotes from bereaved parents as well. So first of all, reflection. My background is in education and social work, and so from that social work, teaching and learning, reflection is one of the most important things we can do. And John Dewey, the educationalist, says it really well. We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. So I could just give you a whole lot of lines to say. Here, say this when you interact with a bereaved parent. Here, say this. But that won't necessarily be helpful because it won't be authentic. It's important for you to reflect on your grief and to think about what your approach is to baby loss and all loss, in fact. So thinking about grief, I'm going to just talk about 4 aspects or impacts, and then I'll talk about communication. So the first one is we have this notion, and I'm talking about first world Western culture here. We think about grief diminishing over time. It's quite a common expectation for that is put on anyone who is grieving, and especially bereaved parents. So here I am 22 years later after my daughter has died, and certainly my grief looks different. And if I had to plot it on a graph like that, it might have that sort of same arc, but grief doesn't diminish to nothing. And then what happens in our society, especially New Zealand 21st century society still, is that people expect grief to diminish over time quite quickly. So bereaved parents often get direct questions and around, are you still grieving? Are you still upset? And this is weeks and months after a baby has died. Like, it's incredible, but there's this expectation that people will, the classic words of move on, get over it, and that grief will diminish. And so that's really important for us to reflect on. Is this what I think? Do I think grief will diminish over time? Is my expectation that bereaved parents I'm working with will get better quickly? So that's the first thing I want to just mention is grief and the amount of grief we have in our lives. And then the next point is that when we're grieving, we can reach out and someone can fix it for us. That grief is fixable, and we're feeling broken, but we can be put back together. And certainly bereaved parents I've talked to over the many years, I've been running support meetings for over 15 years, talk about never being the same person, that there was a before and after version of them when their baby died. And I'm a big fan of Brené Brown, who says in her TED talk on shame and vulnerability, one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. But really, can a response make something better? What makes something better is connection. So that's the second thing to reflect on is, am I someone who tries to fix people's grief? Am I someone who wants to make things better? And it's a natural reaction, being human, that we want to make someone feel better. But when someone has experienced a huge loss, a huge tragedy, the death of their very precious baby, they don't want to be put back together or fixed. And Parker Palmer says this really well. The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, and companioned exactly as it is. And then Megan Devine, who has written a fantastic book called It's Okay That You're Not Okay, meeting grief and loss in a culture that doesn't understand. She's talking about the USA, but it's first world Western culture, which we can relate to. And she talks about how we don't need to fix each other when we're grieving. When a bone is broken, to liken it to a bone, it needs a supportive cast around it to help it heal. It needs external support so it can go about the intricate, complex, and difficult process of growing itself back together. Your task is to be part of that cast for your broken friend, not to do the actual mending, not to offer pep talks to the broken places about how they're going to be great again, not to offer suggestions about how the bone might go about becoming whole. Your task is simply be there. Wrap yourself around what is broken. Your job is to be a witness to something beautiful and terrible, and to resist the very human urge to fix it or make it right. And that's hard. And that, I love Megan's description there, because it's true. It's really hard just to be with someone in their pain. We want to pull them out of the puddle of pain, but sometimes, most times, it's best if we actually sit beside the puddle and just be a witness to how awful it is, because it's awful no matter what anyone says. It's awful. And then the third aspect of grief that I just wanted to touch on is positive psychology, or the cult of happiness that we're in. So in 1998, the same year that my daughter died, positive psychology was recognized as a scientific, or a science in the Western world. And it's become it's sort of through to the 21st century anyway, it's infiltrated our whole society, this need to be happy. And you can see that in, there's a plethora of resources out there about happiness. And we have happiness scales, and countries, we do measurements around which country is the happiest. And while there's nothing wrong with being happy, it can hurt someone who's grieving when the focus is on being happy rather than someone acknowledging that someone is actually in pain. And this cult of positivity lives on our social media platforms, and that's where bereaved parents also where this surrounds them. And so on our social media, on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and all these amazing technological platforms, there are beautiful graphics that talk about happiness. Be happy, be bright, be you, and think positive, and positive things will happen. And some of these expressions of happiness and encouraging people to be happy, some of them are lovely, and I'm a Pollyanna at the best of times. I really try to be happy and try to have a positive attitude myself. But when someone's grieving, having messages about being positive isn't helpful. And you get messages like this: you can feel sad, but don't be sad for too long. You deserve to be happy. And don't be sad because it ended. Be happy because it happened. So you can see that for many bereaved parents, the space to grieve just gets smaller and smaller and smaller when there's messages around them and sort of influences, really, spoken and unspoken, that they shouldn't be dwelling on this sad thing, but they should be looking to a positive aspect about it. And then that leads me to the last point that I want to make, which is around transcending loss. And Megan Devine talks about this really well. She says we have a cultural narrative that says bad things happen in order to make you grow. And no matter how bleak it seems, the end result is always worth the struggle. And we see that in our popular psychology, like happiness, positive psychology, self-help books, movie storylines, book plots, and spiritual texts which glorify grief and loss as the way to grow as a person. And transcending loss is our biggest goal. So I'll often say about my daughter, her little life changed my big life forever. And that's an aspect of this, transcending loss. I got something out of her brief little life. But I'm really careful when I'm in support meetings and talking to bereaved parents that I don't talk about that, and that I don't talk about the things we do every year for her birthday. So they seem to, get bigger and bigger every year, and we donate money to someone, or I buy backpacks for the number of however old she would be and donate them to a Decile 1 school, and I do lots of things every year. But I don't talk about that to bereaved parents because of this notion of transcending loss. Because for some people, their baby died and it's a tragedy, and they live with that tragedy and life continues, and they don't necessarily start up a SANS group in their community, or they don't necessarily donate lots of money to somewhere. And so what we have to be careful of is if we suggest this sort of reaction to grief, that people have this this kind of pressure that they need to do something in the name of their baby. They need to honour their child's life, and they're not doing enough to honour them. And so Megan Devine says, grief is not an enlightenment program for a select few. No one needs intense, life-changing loss to become who they are meant to be. The universe is not causal in that way. You need to become something, so life gives you this horrible experience in order to make it happen. On the contrary, life is call and response. Things happen and we absorb and adapt. We respond to what we experience, and that is neither good nor bad, as simply is. The path forward is integration, not betterment. So as a health professional or caring professional, I think it's important for us to think of these 4 aspects of grief and keep them in mind when we're working with someone, that we're not, these aren't beliefs and expectations that we have ourselves, implicit bias that we have, that someone's grief is not diminishing, and that they seem to be still so sad weeks and months and years later, or that we think that what we say will spark something and fix it for them, or if we think that we can encourage them to look on the bright side of things and look at the positive things that came out of your baby's life, or that we can transcend loss, and actually our baby coming was a lesson for us to learn about life. All those things can actually be harmful to parents, depending on where they're coming from. If a parent says, I want to be positive, and if a parent says, my baby coming and living for a short time I'm taking that as a lesson in life, then that's fine. We can think whatever we like about our own losses, but it's if others put the expectation on us to think or behave a certain way, then that's not fine. And Trina, my cat, has just made an appearance. So I'll have to do this working around him. So yeah, so that's 4 aspects of grief that I touching briefly on, but I always really encourage you to think, to reflect, and think about what your approaches are. Like, what was your upbringing? What did you see around you? What sort of messages did you get about how long you could grieve for? What grief could look like? How it could manifest? What certain stigma around different types of losses? Always reflecting on that ourselves if we are the people helping others in those situations. And then moving on to communication, what to say and not say, and starting with what not to say. And so there are 3 themes that I always talk about: hierarchies of loss, minimization, and platitudes and euphemisms, because these are three themes that always come up for bereaved parents, always. And so with hierarchies of loss, this is the idea that there's some sort of scale around loss. And so if a baby dies at 6 weeks gestation, it's not nearly as bad as a 96-year-old woman, grandmother, dying. You know, like we do this measurement. So there's no, within loss, there's no hierarchy, there's no measurement, especially around baby loss. But it's something that happens all the time, and it's also something that's quite a natural reaction. So our brains are hardwired to categorize and classify. So that is what we do as part of, you know, being human, part of being alive. We're always working out, you know, our environment around us, and classifying something's bigger, smaller, faster, slower, more dangerous, less dangerous. That's part of what we do as humans. So it's a natural response that we would apply it to grief and to baby loss. But it's never helpful, and it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply at all. So we naturally want to make sense of a situation, experience, or a story, and we classify it within our range of knowledge and experience. So someone has a loss around 10 weeks, and we know someone who experienced the loss of a baby around 12 weeks, and they were fine. So we share that with someone to let them know that you know, they'll be okay, because we're trying to fix things. And in society, we categorize baby and infant loss often depending on the length of life and degrees of perceived tragedy. So you'll have people who are told, bereaved parents who are told, well, it's not like, you know, the baby lived for very long, and it's not like you were very pregnant. And there are on a discussion board. Sorry, now my dog is here. There are, on a discussion board recently, I saw someone talking about being told that they were only a little bit pregnant. It's not like, you know, you were very pregnant. And so the responses there were around, well, you're either pregnant or you're not. You know, there's no such thing as being a little bit pregnant. But that was that thing of minimizing and saying, well, it wasn't that bad. Because there are no degrees of tragedy, no gradients of grief, no better than, no worse. It's all just awful, sad, tragic, and worthy of compassion. And when we feel like there are hierarchies of loss, bereaved parents often feel like they are less worthy of compassion or sympathy because their baby died earlier in gestation. So someone may have had a first trimester loss, but they feel like that's not as bad as a second trimester loss, which is not as bad as a third trimester, full term loss, or baby dying around birth, or baby dying as a toddler. We do this measurement, categorizing, hierarchy thing. And that's a natural thing to do, but as a health or caring professional, it's important for us to dispel that and let people know that it's not helpful, and there's no one is less worthy of compassion than anyone else. So this quote is from a bereaved parent who said, a mum from school asked me about 2 weeks after baby had died, how are you going? What are you doing for Christmas? She didn't know. I told her something like, I'm not thinking of Christmas really, we just lost our baby. And she stopped it and looked at me and said, oh, I know what you mean. Our truck just got written off. And of course, our response is, oh my gosh, that's awful. That woman was not trying to be malicious. She was categorizing and classifying, and she was finding something in her own experience that was awful, and trying to relate that to this person, this mum whose baby had died. It's a natural response and something that we need to be aware of. And I often, if I'm talking to bereaved parents, I prepare them for these sort of responses. And sometimes they, if I, they'll come back to a support meeting. I might have seen them in the hospital, but they'll say, "Thank you, Vicki. We got all of those things that you told us were going to happen." So the next thing that I'll tell them about is, "Oh, sorry, I've got another quote. Sorry, my second miscarriage was at 5.5 weeks, and for some reason, I felt like I didn't have as much right to grieve for that one than my 10-week one. I felt like others looked at me like, 'Why are you so sad? You only just found out you were pregnant.' I felt like since I didn't have as long to daydream about the future and make as many plans, I shouldn't feel as sad. But the minute I saw those 2 lines, the plans were there, the date was set when I would meet my baby. I was a mum when I saw those 2 lines." So that's a really important point to make, that this mum has said, as soon as a woman, partners find out that they're expecting a baby, the future is set. They see that baby. They see we're at Christmas, we're going to have a 3-month-old. We're going to have to get a new bedroom. Oh my gosh, little Bobby Joe's going to have a little sister or brother. We project ourselves into the future. So no matter when that baby dies, gestation or after birth, no matter when, it's a tragedy for that family because that's their precious baby. Right, the second point around communication is the minimization of loss. And this happens with baby loss all the time. And there's 2 words that are the most used words to minimize it, and they are "at least." And this is part of that, think back to the Band-Aids, wanting to fix things, wanting to make someone feel better. So parents have lots of sentiments relayed to them like, "Well, at least you know you can get pregnant," and "Well, at least you have your 2 other children," and "At least you know why he died, post-mortem results. At least it happened before you really got to know them." I could fill up the rest of this presentation, PowerPoints, on all the "at leasts" that have been said to parents. And we say that, we do that because we are looking for that silver lining, and it's part of that cult of positivity as well, that, focus on happiness. We need to find something good to say to make them feel better, when in fact, we know that nothing is going to make us feel better. And again, going back to Megan Devine, she talks about the "at least" and says it really well. And she says, the problem is that there's an implied second half of the sentence. That second half of the sentence unintentionally dismisses or diminishes your pain. It erases what is true now in favour of some alternate experience. If we cringe or feel angry when friends or family or health and caring professionals try to comfort us with sentences that start with "at least," it's because we hear the second half of that sentence even when it's not said out loud. The implication is always there, speaking louder in its own silence. Stop feeling how you feel. So as soon as we say "at least," the subtext is stop feeling how you're feeling. Well, at least he died doing what he loved. So stop being sad and carry on with life. Or at least, and that's thinking about an adult because that's something that's said a lot, but at least you know you can get pregnant. So stop going on about this baby and carry on. Well, at least you have your other 2 children. So please stop going on about this baby and carry on. So there's a subtext there. And it's when we hear that "at least," there's that, sort of cringe, or we feel a little bit of tension there, and we often don't know why, and it's because of that. Why are they telling me something good? when something terrible has happened. And this quote is from a bereaved parent. Some people commented on my first one that it was not really a miscarriage, just a late period. But for us, it was actually devastating, as it happened after nearly 3 years of infertility. So the blow was kind of twofold. The baby was very real in our minds. So that was someone for whom someone had minimized their loss by saying, well, it wasn't, it was just a late period, not even a miscarriage. So we minimize it and try to make it seem like it's not really important. We're not listening to the person that's grieving, who's saying, this is important to me and this is making me sad. And then the third point around what not to say, platitudes and euphemisms. And these are really common amongst all grief, but especially common with baby loss. So platitudes, a platitude repeats obvious, simple and easily understood statements that have little meaning or emotional weight. So we all know these platitudes. Well, it was meant to be. God needed another flower in his garden. These things happen. Time heals all wounds. God won't give you anything more than you can handle. And they're well-worn statements that we've heard many times. And so what we often do is revert. We don't know what to say, so we revert to something that we've heard before. And it's kind of a trite, well-worn statement, but it's sort of like, well, at least it's something I can say. But they're meaningless. They have no weight. Platitudes are just meaningless, and they don't serve any purpose for someone who's in deep, deep grief. In fact, the purpose that they serve is that they will just probably feel annoyed. And then the other is a euphemism, a polite, mild phrase which substitutes, which substitutes unpleasant ways of saying something sad or uncomfortable. And it comes from the Greek phrase euphemismos, meaning to sound good. And we use a lot of euphemisms in baby loss and in death in general. So the terms are what I think of as the neutral terms: died, dead, deceased, stillborn. And the euphemisms that we use are passed away, lost the baby, passed on, born sleeping. Now, if a parent or a family that we're working with uses euphemisms and like talks about my baby was born sleeping and never says the word stillborn, then that's the pattern that we'll follow. What I would suggest is that as a professional that you always use neutral terms, because you don't, until you hear what sort of approach that family is taking. So one family I think of that they always talked about their little girl who died when she was about 1.5 years old. They always talked about her passing away, always. And in support meetings, I noticed it, and I talked to the mum one night and said, I just noticed your language. And she said, yeah, we cannot say the word dead or died. We just can't. It's not physically possible. We always just say passed away. And I had noticed it and just asked her about that. And so I would never talk to them about their daughter dying. I would always talk to them about their daughter passing away. But if I didn't know them, I would talk about their daughter who died. And I often say to health professionals, died is just a whole lot softer than dead. Dead, I would never say dead baby, but I would say a baby who died. And that's just a little bit softer, and it's neutral, and yeah, I would listen to what the family was saying. Now there's terminology within baby loss that you may use as well, and these are all euphemisms. An angel baby is a baby who died. A rainbow baby is a subsequent baby after loss. A sunshine baby is a baby or child who was in the family before the loss. And then a sunrise and a sunset baby are twins, a twin who lived, a sunrise baby, and a twin who died, a sunset baby. Now, These terms, especially angel baby and rainbow baby, are very, very common in the baby loss community. But some parents don't like to use them. And so some parents will say, well, my baby's not an angel, because they're not someone who believes in that sort of thing, and angels and cherubs. And then there's rainbow baby. That came from the idea of there's always a rainbow after a storm. Well, some parents reject that and say, I don't think of my baby as something negative like a storm. So therefore, I don't like that term, rainbow baby. So I would never use these terms until I knew that the family were using them. So I would always talk about your baby who died, your subsequent baby after loss, your living children, the older siblings, and I'll talk about the twins, your living twin and your twin who died. So I would be really careful around using those euphemisms until you knew they were okay to use. And it's the family's call whether they want to use them or not. So these are some examples of that platitudes and euphemisms. You already have 4 healthy ones. It was probably not meant to be a platitude. And then I've put this one in because the best thing I found was I was told that everything happens for a reason. The worst was, don't worry, you will get pregnant again. And I put that in because here's someone who said, I really liked having a platitude said to me. I really liked being told everything happens for a reason. And I like having that quote in there because it reminds me that I'm talking about years and years of experience, but I'm still generalizing, and not everyone feels the same way. So I'm always careful to make sure that I'm as neutral as possible, and I check out what that family is feeling. So for this woman, yeah, she liked being told that, and it was meaningful for her. So what to say? There's not a whole lot of quotes. There's not a whole lot of things to tell you to say. The important things, well, I'll go to this now. The important things are to validate, connect, and acknowledge. So that might be saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It sounds like you're in a lot of pain. This sounds really hard. I'm so sorry. It's just about acknowledging and validating. When I say validate, I'm not talking about giving permission. I'm talking about acknowledging and noticing and seeing, like we want to be seen. So saying, this sounds really awful. That baby was obviously really precious to you. So yeah, validate, connect. In doing that, we connect with someone. In doing that, we connect, we acknowledge their pain, we connect with them in some way. Maybe not massively, but we connect as in our humanity. This week on the Capsule website, there's an article, 27 mums who lost their babies share the things people did that made a difference. So rather than me list a whole lot of things that were said and that people had done, I really encourage you to go to capsulenewzealand.com or capsulenz.com and read that article and look at, and this is mums, a lot of mums whose babies have died recently over the last couple of years through SANS. This was sourced, who can talk about what it was that was helpful or meaningful to them. So yeah, validate, connect, acknowledge. How do I remember that? This is what I'm suggesting, VCA, validate, connect, acknowledge, which is Vicki Culling Associates. That's just an idea. We remember things in threes. Our brains often remember things in threes, so that's just an idea for you. Now, a lot of what I've said is actually in this article on capsulenz.com, which came out on Monday, how to support a friend or family who has lost a baby. So a lot of this, a lot of what I've said is in there. So I encourage you to have a look at that article as well. yeah, it's the Capsule has been putting up an article every day. It's been great to really to raise awareness and acknowledge baby loss as important. So this is my unashamedly moment of self, what's the word, publicity. So I do online learning if you want to learn some more and learn with others. I use a really great platform that is user-friendly. I've got really great feedback from the people who have done my courses. Yeah, there's the cost. You can email me if you want to know more about it, and it's on my website, bca.co.nz. And so I've acknowledged our babies at the start, and then just to bring it to a close, I'm ending with a quote rather than a whakatauki, and this is from Dr. Seuss, but it's a really good quote and one I use a lot. So unless someone like you cares an awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So I think I've raced through a little bit, and maybe I've got maybe I'm a little bit early. I'm not sure, Trina, but that's everything at the moment.
That's fantastic, Vicki. Just perfectly on time. And if anyone's got any questions, now's the time to ask those in the chat function. I think the main points, Vicki, that you've brought up is, acknowledging, using that right language, and like you say, connecting with the parents and using the language that they are communicating with at that time, when they're going through that grief. And, the last thing you want to do is sort of talk with them, not in a good way.
And not try to fix it, not try to feel that we're the person that's going to fix everything. It's going to take a long time and a whole lot of different people. So all we can do is, be our authentic selves and connect with them. And Maya Angelou says, we might not remember what someone said to us, but we always remember how they made us feel. Yeah.
True. Great. Well, I can't see any questions popping up, so I think you've done a fantastic job. If anybody does need to get in contact with Vicki, then you've got her details on that previous slide in bca.co.nz for further information available on Vicki's website. So a huge paki paki for you, Vicki, for your time today. Thank you. Creating baby loss awareness during the week that's happening. And great to see all that information coming through from Capsule NZ as well on the Facebook page.
Cool. Do you want me to stop sharing and come back?
Yeah.
Do that. I'll do that. There we go.
Lovely. Thank you. Can see you in a nice big picture at the end. Great. All right, well, go well, everybody. Thank you again, Vicki, for your time today. Really, really appreciate everything that you've done. And just really great information, just those little snippets for people to be able to take away and use in their work.
Great. Thank you. Kia ora. Ka kite.